Going live. Okay, so we're assuming we're on. Welcome back. At our usual time with another new setup yet again. Philip is back away from behind the camera. We don't have a special guest today, but it's kind of a special one for us because we haven't been just me and you in a long time. So we're kind of going to give you a rundown today. We don't have a topic in mind, but God's going to provide and He'll give us whatever it is we need to do. So we're fixing to make a trip, ain't we?
We are. We're going to see my mom. We're going to see my sister. We are. It's be the first time in a long time that I've went through Kentucky to go to West Virginia. My sister lives north of Charleston. The rest of my family pretty much lives south of Charleston, so I go through Virginia. But this time I'll be going through Kentucky. A little bit of unfamiliar territory. Be traveling a lot of it after dark.
So you and Kathy are the only two siblings that have branched that far out, you being the farthest?
Oh, no. You mean away from West Virginia?
Yeah, away from the central location.
Oh, definitely not. No. Well, my oldest brother, he lives in Alabama now, but he's lived all over the place.
Oh.
And then I have siblings that live and lived. I have some siblings that's passed in the Chicago area.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So.
Of course, we've discussed your brother in Vietnam.
Yes. Yes. He traveled quite a distance.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah. So, yeah, we get that opportunity there. We're going to go and see Kathy for a little while and see Mabel. And, of course, listeners, you'll remember Mabel from her three? She's called in.
She's been on one at her house, I think, visually. The rest of them are call-ins, one or two call-ins, yeah.
But she's a fan favorite. She by far, I think, gets the best reaction to everybody. So we're going to, this time, instead of just being Philip and Joe in West Virginia, I'll actually be able to make the trip this time, too. So we'll have a special podcast for that. I don't know if we'll do it Sunday morning or you want to do maybe Saturday so we can tell them?
The podcast?
Yeah.
I want to do it on Saturday, probably from Kathy's house, sometime during the day on Saturday before we travel down. And then Saturday night, you'll be preaching at Mom's assembly.
I'm excited just for not just for the opportunity to preach at a different church, but for it to be on a Saturday night.
Yeah, I talked to Kathy. I talked to Ann, which will see my other sister Ann also. I talked to her, and she said that she's pretty sure that there's no cell service or Wi-Fi.
Oh, sure.
So I'll probably record that, and then when we get somewhere with signal, I will put that on the church's Facebook link for in place of what we normally do for our morning service.
Yeah. So is Ann? I guess Ann would be the one that takes her to and from that body, or?
Yes, usually. Yeah.
Our Sunday morning regular service, not for the podcast, but for the regular church, it'll be, like he said, just a recording from that Saturday night because we won't make it back in time for our regular Sunday service here. But I'm excited for the opportunity. Anytime I get the opportunity to preach to a different group, I'm excited. Not that I don't like preaching to you guys, but it's good to get to a new audience because there are some things that I may be able to cover that I feel like I cover too much to you guys. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I believe we may have
a visitor.
A third chair coming in here directly. But yeah, I'm very excited for that and the opportunities we get to go out there and see your family. I really like being able to talk with everybody in your family, really, Jackie and Ann, and your mom, just to see from a different perspective, because they do go to a different denomination set, I guess, but they're from a different area and a different generation.
Yes.
And so to be able to see God through their eyes and their experiences, I think is really awesome. Because I think, God, He's the same God, but He fulfills a different need that we each may have at different times. He is the great need fulfiller, and I like to see how for your mom, she's had different needs from God than I have, and I like to hear her take on what He's done for her. That makes sense.
Oh, she's. When you're 93, and you've lived the kind of life she has. I don't mean that. That didn't sound good. I mean when you when you've lived the kind of life. I mean
she's had some hardships.
She's
that
had some
not.
hardships. Yeah, lost children, lost husband, 2 husbands. She has
the Reverend Jonathan Barker.
I mean, it's been a whole different aspect of life, and what she's had to put through. I mean, what she's had to go through and rely on Christ for. It's like I say, she. I would love to have Mom's walk, but I wouldn't want to go through what she's been through to get it.
Right.
Yeah.
But you can just hear in the way that she talks.
Yes.
That the relationship that she has is really a lot closer than most people, if not everybody, that I've heard of. Because when she talks about the time that she had the vision and she was reaching out, touched the hem of that garment before that had ever been even told to her.
Yes.
That story. That's incredible.
She'd never read the Bible, didn't know that story, had never been to church to hear it.
That's the same kind of experience Paul had, but this wasn't what you're doing is wrong, I'm going to knock you off your high horse to get you back. This is you have the right spirit, I'm going to reach out to you.
That's you. Oh, come on.
I thought I had it, man.
Look at the light.
That's what I was heard. So, are you talking about your mom? I'm gathering so far.
We're talking about our trip
upcoming
trip. Yes.
Have you just determined if you're going to be able to or not?
I'm still currently working on it.
Yeah.
My inside intentions is yes, but my availability may not be yes. But
I directed our group to head your way regardless. So as long as somebody's there to open the door,
Stephen will be there if I'm not there. So.
Yeah. Did you hear? So Stephen, we're counting on you, buddy. If Jonathan's not able to be there, and that's one of the. I guess it's a great thing to have this relationship that we have within our churches, that we can say, "Hey, I'm out," cover kind of that thing. But when we're both going to be out potentially, what do you do?
What do? You just do what you got to do.
I told Jonathan yesterday, I said, man, I know I'm asking a lot. I know I'm a very needy person.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he said, I guess my sister's soul isn't anything important. Yeah. I'm like, thanks, Eeyore.
I'm just excited. Like I was telling them before you got here, I'm excited at the opportunity to preach at a new audience.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, just to be able to give something out there.
Yeah, that'll be awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited to stay with Kathy. I'm excited because she, she's injured. She has a knee injury.
So she has to sit there and listen.
Well, she's lost her job. The system does not work like it should.
No.
And so she's just in a place where Mom comes and her and Mom are so much alike. Mom and her are good for one another, but they're also very much alike, and they're mother and daughter. And then I talked to her, about her faith and about that type thing. But I was my spiritual hope was that you guys would be able to share with her what me and Mom can't share. It's not that it'll be anything different or anything she doesn't already know, just from a different perspective.
Yeah.
I still have intentions on going.
Yeah.
I just haven't worked things out.
Sure.
I mean, just like we're talking about this, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And there's nothing we can do to get in the way of God's plan.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like.
The other day I made a similar statement to that, and I got completely shut down. And they said, well, it must be God's plan for kids to get killed. And I'm like,
no.
I'm like, that's not really what I was saying.
Well, that's conflating. Like I talked about this morning in our service, there's everything in the world God allows to happen.
Yeah.
There's nothing out of His control. And so when we see things like that with, children getting killed or people getting sick, whatever it is, while it looks horrible, there has to be a reason for it.
Yeah. And, well, sin entered into the world, and death by sin. That's what the Bible says. So bad things that happen come not from God, but they come from us for being disobedient to God.
Yeah.
My whole sermon this morning was about obedience. It talked about Gideon when it first introduced Gideon in the Bible in Judges 6.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never seen this before in my life until I read it today and just clicked. At the beginning of Judges 6, it talks about Gideon. He was at the wine press, and an angel of the Lord appeared unto him and said, Gideon, he said, the Lord is with you. It started out that way. The Lord is with you. So, and Gideon's response was, well, I don't feel like he's with me. And how many of us have gone through that?
You never feel that way.
It's like, I don't feel like you're with me because of all this stuff that happens. And then Gideon said, where is the God that delivered us out of Egypt that our fathers have told us about? Mm-hmm. And, the Lord really hit my heart on that. It's like, man, my kids need to see God in me, not hear of stories, Mm-hmm. But at the end of that chapter 6, the Bible says, and the Spirit came upon Gideon. Mm. And the only thing that happened in between the Lord was with and the Spirit came upon was Gideon was obedient. Mm. The only thing that was different. Gideon followed the obedience of God even though it didn't make sense. He tore down the idols of Baal. The people came after him and they said, bring him out here so we can kill him. And his father, who was a wise man, said, why are you fighting for a God? Is he not big enough to fight for himself? And yes. I use that as, mm-hmm. like, and you look at our God, the Lord will fight for you, hold your peace, Exodus 14. Mm-hmm. The walls of Jericho, the plan, I talked about all these military men at the church. I said if I got all these military men in the church together to take over the city of Jericho, we'd have all these elaborate plans, and then some random guy would be like, I know what we need to do. Walk around the city 7 days in a row and shout. And everyone would look at him and was like, are you stupid? But the idea is God fought all those battles. Mm-hmm. Israel didn't. Israel just had to be obedient to do it.
And that's Israel was an army. They did conquer. They did fight. They did have that. The reason that Jericho happened the way that it did was because it had to be God that way. Just like the way David took down Goliath, because it had to be a God thing.
Exactly.
Because a young, weak man can't throw a rock to sink in somebody's skull. I'm sure they could, but it's not likely.
Right.
And blowing a horn 7 times and shouting is not going to tear down the city walls. It has to be a God thing.
Exactly.
He makes no mistake that what happens is him. But we see that people conflate that and make it about themselves, and you can see later on in Judges especially, there's a whole lot of men that God does things for that they say, well, I did that.
Yeah.
And put that forth.
Well, yeah, and I don't think Gideon was always... I still have a problem with him saying "and of Gideon," mm-hmm. the sword of the Lord. I still have an issue with that personally.
Sure.
But at the beginning of the story, the Lord was with him, and the Spirit came upon him. I love the thought process that all we have to do to feel the Spirit of God is to just be obedient.
Absolutely.
And that's where the action comes in. It doesn't come in for salvation. Gideon had the Lord on him before he was obedient. Mm-hmm. He was obedient to listen to the fathers of Israel and know that God was there and God was with him, and he probably did the sacraments and things mm-hmm. of Israel. But the Spirit of the Lord fell upon him or came upon him for the first time after his obedience, and that's kind of where we're at. We want to feel the Lord. We have to be obedient, and it doesn't always. I don't always want to be. I'm just gonna be honest with you.
Sure.
A lot of times I'd rather be selfish with my time, mm-hmm. and I said that in church this morning. I said Christian life is inconvenient. I said, you need to get it. This is not the life to get into if you don't want to be inconvenienced. If you don't want some guy to say, hey, I want you to go to West Virginia with me next Wednesday, and just cancel your schedule. Just cancel your schedule. Go to West Virginia with me. But and I'm like kicking around this idea, trying to figure out a way to do it. And if I can do it, I'm do it.
And so it is inconvenient because you're a business owner. You've got things to do. But I think at the same time, your spirit yearns to do that more than working that business. It's just you've got real things to work with, and I think that's one thing that especially non-believers don't understand. Well, yeah, it is convenient. It's inconvenient to give 10% of your wealth to a church that you may or may not have a part of. In that sense, it's inconvenient to be charitable. It's inconvenient to go someplace and pray for somebody, or to take time out of your life just to talk to somebody, or to go to another state. But it's not inconvenient to us because I do desire to do those things. At the same time, I'm desiring not to do them.
I feel like going to work is inconvenient.
Oh, it sure is.
Sure is.
Yeah. And not for the reason of I don't want to work.
Yeah.
It's for the reason that I feel like that there's all these things that I want to do that I can't do for the Lord because I have to work. Yeah. It's not saying that, I think the Lord is just going to make me independently wealthy where I don't have to do that. I'm just saying that's how my spirit feels. I yearn to do the things of the Lord.
Yeah.
I do not yearn really to go to work. I like my job. I have an awesome job. I have a wonderful job, and God has blessed me my whole life with good jobs.
Yeah.
But I think He does that because my spirit yearns to work for Him.
Yeah. Well, we can see in our community needs, and we can see how we can fulfill those needs given time.
Right.
And so when we have to work Monday through Friday or whatever it is, we're limited these so many hours a day, and we've still got to sleep, we got to drive, got to eat, got to grocery shop, got to spend time with our families. And so that takes away from being able to go to a nursing home and be able to witness somebody, to be able to go into the prisons and witness, and that kind of leaves this limited amount of time. If we didn't have the Monday through Friday, well, Monday through Friday could be doing that stuff, could be out there sharing the word and spreading the love.
If I didn't have my Monday through Friday, there's a lot of things that I could not do, for the Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's always the other, I guess the devil's advocate side says, if we had that time, would we use it wisely?
Sure.
I think if we didn't, He would take it away.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the other side of the table.
Or that's how my heart feels.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
so
I want them to.
think about the quote unquote perfect day. We wake up, we meet at the coffee shop. Whether you're working there or not, we still meet there. Have coffee, have us a daily Bible study. Okay, well, so today we say we're going to go to the prisons. We go someplace, we witness, we testify, we do whatever it is.
Awesome.
We work with somebody. Tuesday, wake up, we're going to old folks' homes today. There's like 50 of them around here.
Yeah.
Plenty of opportunities. Or, hey, this brother's sick in bed at hospice. Let's go see that brother. He can't come to us. And this could be a time-sensitive thing. I remember my friend Paris, there had been like 2 days in a row, he was laying on a mattress in his living room floor dying, begging me to come see him, and I was getting off at 11 o'clock each night and had to be back at 6 o'clock the next day. Couldn't do it. The one day I got off in time, went to see him, stayed and prayed with him till 2 o'clock. He died at 3 o'clock in the morning. It was one of those God time-sensitive issues. There's plenty of those cases out there that we're kind of hands tied. What can we do for that?
Yeah.
People we don't even know.
Right.
But that's just thoughts. And, there's plenty of missions that we've talked about setting up and starting and being able to participate in. And really all they need at this point is someone there to participate.
Yeah, someone there in a facility. And we have all of those things. We just don't have the time. But if it's God's will, God's time. And I'm under that impression. We do have things to do. We have to do our part.
Yeah.
But I am under the thought process that God's will be done, and that's the way it is. Yeah. And so
He could have something far bigger than anything we're imagining, that He's waiting for the time for it to happen.
Exactly. But people, I guess people have an issue with saying, well, the Lord's will is going to be done. They have issue with that because that makes us that gives the people the right in people's heads to be lazy.
Oh, sure.
That's not the case. God's will was for Israel to get to the promised land. But God's perfect will was Israel to get to the promised land in 3 days.
Yeah.
Not 40 years.
Yeah.
But so God's perfect will didn't happen. But God's will happened.
Sure.
And so it's kind of the way it is.
If God's will was for us to lay around, be lazy, and have stuff brought to us, He never would have healed a cripple.
Exactly.
Well, there's not one of those people that made it.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Not one of the mockers that were at the Red Sea scoffing and saying, "You should have let us die in Egypt." It's like, well,
But their offspring, which is a promise that He made generations before, did make it.
exactly. Well, that's the thing. We need to understand that God's promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were to the children of Israel. That was not a specific line.
It wasn't
people.
specific people.
Yeah, it was. It was their lineage. Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So,
You talk.
no, that's fine. But it is a hard. I feel like, and I was thinking about this on the way here with this podcast. This podcast even is in a not a, I don't want to call it a slump, but it's in a battle right now. This podcast is in a battle right now. You can sense it, you can see it. People are falling off left and right, here and there. And I'm like, well, I'd like to welcome the podcast to the daily battle. It's like,
it's really never not been.
Yeah,
It's just showing up a little more.
Yeah, showing up. You know, when you see that board completely empty, with my name, the only one there that I didn't even know I was going to be here.
We
last
got more.
week.
I just hadn't wrote them up there.
Oh, okay, that's good. Yeah.
Well, this is kind of an open. It doesn't always have to be testimonies, but we absolutely prefer those. But what I was thinking of whenever you said that was Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. Now the Lord said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house into a land that I will show thee. Very simply, he's saying, hey, you've got to go. You're not meant to stay here. I have a reason for you to go out, and I will make of thee a great nation. I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. So that's the promise again. He's repeating that for the second time there, I believe, that he is going to be the head, the figurehead of a great number of people. But here's the part that gets me. I will bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curse thee, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. Mm-hmm. And so after Abraham, we see that it leads up to this Israelites, stay away from these people. So that you can barter with them on a very far out way, but you're not going to intermingle with them. This says that all families will be blessed because eventually all families will be under that figurehead of Abraham.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we're at.
And the line of Abraham's where Christ came from.
Well, right. Not only that, but the line of Abraham brought Christ, and they actually... as he laid himself down, they crucified him, which is how we really get to all families. Because at the crucifixion, and he gave himself for all mankind. Because a lot of times, we talked about that's a real uncomfortable scripture when you start reading about the woman that come for her daughter to be relieved of that demon, and Christ called her a dog.
Yeah.
And and then she's like, even the dogs get their crumbs from the master's table, and so that's a real uncomfortable scripture. It's very Jewish in nature, and
I wonder why.
But everything had its time period, and everything had to work itself out. Now, when he, as we notice, not only in that story but reading through the scripture, when he seen people of extraordinary faith, the centurion, this lady. Jew, Gentile, it didn't matter. When he seen their faith, he still worked in their lives, even though, like you're saying, it wasn't really his pathway. It wasn't really what he was going to do, and that's what he was saying in that moment, is that, I'm with the Jews, I'm come through the Jews, and he's, I'm thinking in his mind, they're going to kill me and all this stuff. This is all working this way, and I really don't, you're going to be okay, lady, in the end, but
it's just not your time.
But she was very persistent, and her faith shone through.
Well, it's the same thing whenever the first miracle happened. At the wedding, whenever they ran out of wine, Mary said, hey, any more wine? He said, it's not my time.
Yeah.
And she said,
this is not in my will. So,
yeah. We are able to, I don't want to say change God's mind, but we're definitely able to put forth an effect. And so it's not his plans changing because he's omnipotent. He knows.
Sure.
But he finds favor in us, and he does things for our benefit that may not be the original plan. Again, Moses was supposed to be there in 3 days, not 40 years, kind of thing. I don't believe that Christ had envisioned turning water into wine as his first miracle.
I don't think so.
You got to think, it's kind of like this. God wants to bless us.
Yeah.
Sure. We are his bride. If I take Chelsea to the store to get milk, but I see something that would be a blessing to her, I'm going to pick it up without thinking about it because I love my wife.
Yeah.
Christ is the same way. If he has a plan for us, but if there's something he can add on just to be a blessing that he knows that would help us, he's going to do it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way it is. It's not necessarily, it wasn't out of John's will to get her something nice with the milk, it's okay as long as I got her the milk.
Yes.
Everything else was just extra.
I think that hits on it too. Chelsea would, if you're at the store there and she says, man, I really like that shirt, again, that wasn't on the shopping list, but because you love her, you're willing to go out of your way to do that for her. And God's plan was to get milk in that sense.
And I may not get her the shirt at that time. I may wait.
Or you may find a better shirt for her.
Or maybe a shirt that you know is not proper for her to wear, and you don't get it.
And I don't get it.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and I know that's a dumbed down way to put it, but that is real. What are we? We are the bride of Christ.
I was about to say,
It's a parable.
That's how Jesus spoke to people. Is he spoke to them in a way that understand. And I think that's an awesome way to do that.
Trying to speak over people's heads is just insane. Just bring it down to my level, that third grade child or less, that just needs.
What's Phil say? Phil.
He's C plus man himself.
Yeah, he says just C plus.
He's smarter than half the people, but half the people smarter than him. He said.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you talk to your audience. There's some people that you can talk to and go, like if we're talking to Anna or with us, we can talk about some pretty weighty things that may be a little confusing, maybe a little bit out there. But then there's people that don't know their gospel, and that's all you can say to them.
A large majority of my church are smarter than me. I know that. I'm not stupid.
I've met Larry.
They're smarter than me. But every one of them, to an extent, has their lane.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
That's
how a body should
None
be.
of us are smarter than each other in every subject. And there are certain things in the Bible that I have a grasp on that even the smartest person in the church doesn't. It's just hasn't clicked yet.
Yeah,
But that doesn't mean they're dumb. It just means they're learning, just like I'm learning certain things. They're learning certain.
That's
things.
why doctors have specialties.
Exactly.
So they can focus on that one thing, and like you said, that's how the body's supposed to work. We're not all supposed to be able to have the complete wholeness of it, or we wouldn't need the body.
Right.
For that. And then so I agree with that. I was telling my dad today, I said, man, I hope Jonathan does get to go to West Virginia, because if you get to preach Saturday night as well, I said, well, we're a fantastic tag team. Whenever we go able to coincide, I think we cover both the grounds of the gospel to the believer and the gospel to the lost very well.
Yeah, I intend on preaching if I go, just because he opened it up. So I'm like, yeah, I'll definitely do it.
From what I gather, this congregation is very much the we start at this time, we end whenever. There's always the question mark at the end of it.
Yeah, Mom says it's usually 10:30, 11 o'clock.
That's awesome.
Must be nice.
Yeah.
It's like 11:59, time for Cracker Barrel.
Yeah.
That's not my church, but I've been to churches very similar.
Yeah, I mean at night.
I've been to Cracker Barrel.
Yeah, not on Sunday. You can't get in.
Yeah, you just got to find that time. So it's really good to see, that we are still active. I know for a lot of you people out there, this may be like, why are these guys talking about the personal stuff? Well, that relates to this. This podcast isn't just here's my story, let's talk about it. There's stuff that goes on in the background. Personal. Let's talk about them. Yeah. And it's good to be able, because we've talked just us several times, but it's good to see what's new, what's been changing in that. And it's good to have you back to be able to have the same thing and just have the third voice.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I came. I was excited to be. Whenever I found out we were leaving, and I love spending time with these people. But whenever Chelsea said we would go, I was like, that's I'll have just enough time to just zoom over there. And so I'm always excited to get around you, whether there's a podcast on or not.
Yeah.
So.
Well, this is how we are, whether the camera's rolling or not.
It's very true. You just come to the coffee shops sometime. You'll see very similar.
I think the biggest difference is we talk a little bit clearer.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, and less pauses.
Yeah. Because dead air is always kind of uncomfortable. So let's talk about what we're doing tonight. Are you going to be able to stay with us tonight, or you got plans? Because we're having a prayer service tonight. And so kind of inspired from Sunday morning's meeting last Sunday, I think that whether we go through the same 3-step process or not, we need to have a time of prayer.
Yeah, I think so too.
And so this morning, Jonathan, we covered Ephesians chapter 3, and at the end of it, Paul is praying to God, but he's praying verbally to the church at Ephesus. And I kind of brought up how that's a unique style of prayer that we don't hear that often today, because we're used to church prayers to where it's like somebody stands up very loudly, says Father
blah,
God,
blah,
or whatever
blah.
it is, and then this big poetic thing
To be heard,
to end. And some of it is to be heard. Some of it is just because we're praying in a group, someone needs to voice, which I love the idea of leading in prayer silently, which is just as awesome. But this prayer was specifically vocalizing to the people what he's praying specifically for, but I think spiritually it was to God in a very more direct sense. And we kind of went over that. So we're going to do something similar tonight, kind of work on that and see how that goes.
Sounds like fun.
I think it's The audible prayer, I think, a lot of times helps people in their growth too. That or maybe babes or just hurting in their prayer life. And a lot of times I start out verbally and end up silent,
Sure.
just because my emotions take over and I can't continue.
Yeah.
But I don't see anything wrong with either. It's the matter of the heart.
It's the why.
It's why are you speaking out loud or why are you being silent? It's not whether you're being silent or whether you're speaking out loud.
One of the most beautiful prayer services I've ever personally been part of, was at the Spirit-Filled Life Conference. It was after the cameras were off. You weren't there, sorry.
Nah.
Because some people work.
Yeah.
Anyway, that inconvenient work that you were talking about earlier.
Yes.
But we after the cameras were turned off, we dismissed everyone. We said, if you don't want to stay, not really the sense of we don't want you here, but at the same time, that's kind of what it was. If you don't want, there were certain people that were there that night between us. Well, I guess between everybody.
Yeah.
That I was like, it would probably be better for them to leave,
Yeah.
and you get that sense, and anybody who's listening understands probably. You kind of get that sense like this person would hinder the prayer meeting, and there's people like that at every church, that. And it wasn't necessarily, I'm not going to say whether it was from my church, your church, or visitors. Nonetheless, it was one of the three. So, but when we had that time when it was just dead silent, nobody was saying anything. And then the first person prayed, and then the second, and it wasn't long prayers. It was just, God, I need healing.
Mm-hmm.
God, thank you for your grace. And then just stopped. It was just little, kind of like, it was like a fulfilled prayer of everybody in about 45 minutes to an hour, and it felt like it was like a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't these long elaborate prayers. It was just short pieces of a full prayer.
Yeah.
And then random singing. It was beautiful.
It was random singing. That's what we talked about Wednesday night, was the why. And so I asked the women that were there, I had them read a section of scripture. I said, what do you think the theme behind this is? And the whole big theme was, why are you doing what you're doing? I don't care if it's giving charitable gifts. I don't care if it's tithing. I don't care if it's praying. I don't care if it's just showing up to church. Why are you doing it? Are you coming to church because you feel like you should? Don't come to church.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is a hindrance. You're not doing good. Are you giving because you want to be seen or because you think you need to? That's not what this is about. Are you praying to be heard? Are you praying because you think you need to and it's just bouncing off the ceiling? That's not what we're here for. The why is more important than the what in every aspect.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you were talking about that, this story came to mind, and this is when Jesus has come to bring the little girl back to life. It's in Luke chapter 8, and starting at 51, it says, and when he came into the house, he suffered no man go in, save Peter and James and John, and the father and the mother of the maiden, to start with. And all wept and bewailed her, but he said, weep not, she is not dead, but sleepeth. And they laughed him to scorn, knowing that she was dead. He put them all out.
There you go.
And took her by the hand and called, saying, Maid, arise. And her spirit came again, and she arose straightway, and he commanded to give her meat. So did he put them out because that he couldn't work with them there? No. I mean, he's God on foot. I don't think that's what it was. I think he put them out because they were no longer worthy to see what was fixing to happen because of their unbelief.
So how do we tell the difference in our own lives of this person needs to be here because they need this message versus this person is a hindrance and they need to be gone so they don't hinder the spirit in this?
In this case, on when I wanted certain people to leave, it was its facial expressions, and also the fact of them like half falling asleep. It's like falling asleep during a prayer meeting is not going to do you much good. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of how it is. You have to follow the Spirit's leading basically what it comes down to is this: it's giving everyone the opportunity to leave, hoping you don't have to be the one to step out and say you need to leave.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if that's all the interest they have, they're going to.
Yeah, they're going to leave. Usually, people are going to sell themselves out long before.
Well,
you have to.
The woman we was talking about that come and wouldn't leave until Christ healed her daughter. The first time, if she would have been, well, let's put it in today's perspective, and so he called her a dog, right? Well, she knew to a Jew that she was a dog, so she was to start off with, she was unoffendable. So how many people in the Christian walk today are unoffendable?
Oh my goodness!
Right? So she was unoffendable. She came there with a purpose. She wasn't leaving without it.
She came with a what?
She was driven. She was unoffendable, and she knew where her help come from.
So she was. So what you're saying is she was unoffendable. What was the second one?
She come with a purpose.
She was unstoppable. What was the third one?
And that she knew where her help come from.
She had unwavering faith. I'm just putting in alliteration so you can teach it.
That's some of that Bible college stuff.
Yeah, that's in that Crown College.
Yeah.
Oh God.
3-point sermons. But no, that's absolutely.
Let me give you a poem.
The 3 points of the poem.
The 3 points aren't bad if it helps you remember it.
Sure.
To get that.
That's why.
There's nothing wrong.
That's honest to God. That's why I do it now.
Yeah.
If I can alliterate it, I will,
Yeah.
because it helps me remember.
Yeah.
And so,
Christ did it. There's nothing wrong with it.
Well, sure.
yeah. I was thinking about, like, today I was going to preach on the subject about how to deal with criticism. Biblically deal with it.
Do
for
you
obvious.
get criticized?
Yeah, for obvious. Yeah, in front of my friends. I was going to preach on that, and I had a sermon that I pulled up, and it talked about how to deal with criticism biblically. You fix it, so it's the idea of looking at the whole counsel that they're talking about and seeing if there's any truth in it, and then what is it? I can't remember. The fix it was the second point, though. The third one was forget it. You face it, face it, fix it, and forget it. So you deal with it when they're telling it to you. You break it down in your head, and you think on it while they're talking, without response. Obviously, that wasn't a good idea for me that day. But you take it without response, and you face it, and then you fix what's there, and then you forget the rest and move on. So, yes.
I think that's a pretty important lesson for everybody to learn is you're going to face criticism from inside the body and outside the body. And I think the determining factor for me is who is in the right.
Yeah.
If you're wrong, hey, admit that you're wrong and figure out how you're wrong.
There's always wrong in every direction except for Christ and the Word.
Yeah. And so if you're standing solidly on the Word of God, and you're and hold fast.
Admit where you're wrong. That's kind of what it came down to with me. It was admitting where I was wrong. If I was wrong in anything, then it's kind of humility. It's being, look, I'm not perfect by any means, even though I was being told that I think I'm perfect, pretty much. and I'm not.
I've been meaning to talk to you about that.
Yeah, thanks.
Sounds like you like talking about it.
Yeah. No, you just listen. No, and so it was a matter. It was a learning experience even for me. It's like, okay,
Sure.
I need to evaluate this. I need to really think on it. And some things that was said, I was like, okay, I should have done better in that, and I openly admitted that completely. But I've thought about the rest of it, and I'm telling you, I don't see it. God allowed me to say I'm sorry for the one area He showed me I was wrong in, and the rest of it was nonsense. I'm just being honest with you, just being straight up, because I walked out thinking, man, did I do that? And then whenever I started really playing it over in my head, not only to myself but also to Phil, not gossiping, just replaying the conversation. And I just found a lot of holes, and I'm just like, this isn't right, And so it is what it is. I don't mean to
There's
talk
a huge
about it.
difference in gossip and talking. And it goes back to the intent of what you're doing. You can relay the same conversation, and the tone and even the eyebrow waggle will determine if it's gossip or not. But you've got to talk about things.
Well, we tell people to do that, and then if they do it, then we say they're gossiping.
Well,
so but you gotta, again, it's the intent. Why are you bringing this? Is Jonathan coming to me to bring it up so that he can throw jabs?
right.
Or is he bringing it to me because he's upset, he's confused, he's trying to find God's path? Is that the reason? Or is it because he just wants to jab?
Are you telling me this because you want me on your side against this person?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I see that. I can get that.
Mm-hmm.
I had a point I was going to bring up. I
Sure you
completely
did.
lost it. It may come back.
But it's
Regardless.
everything you go at is from it's what the heart condition
It's
is.
what hill are you willing to die on?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so that's where we draw the line. Am I willing to die on the hill of Austin?
Right.
That's where I've been dying this whole time. Or am I willing to die on the hill of Christ? Because the hill of Christ has killed Austin a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to determine, is this God that's holding this up, or is this me that's holding this up? 'Cause if
Absolutely.
it's me, then it's wrong, and I need to tear that down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a hard line to. I mean, at least for me, speaking personal experience, if I feel strongly in something,
Mhm.
my mind's going to tell me God put that there. And there's a lot of times where God's like, "Oh, I didn't tell you that.
Yeah, that's
I didn't tell you that at all."
pride brings that to you.
Yeah.
And I think it is a fine line, like gossip and talking about it, because we talked
is.
about it in spirit, and then there were times that we jabbed about it. You know, it kind of went both ways on it. So I'm not stupid enough to think, oh, it's perfect in every
Yeah.
conversation.
Right.
But it's a matter of knowing where you stood. That's kind of what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's and so what it came down to is I learned something, and without knowing it, you learned something about me that I didn't. So, but I learned something, honestly, about myself in comparison to how I used to handle things and how I handled it this time.
Mhm.
And so God showed me something that was new to me, because like I told him, I'm quick-witted at times, and too quick-witted to where it's like I'll say something just to get to somebody,
Sure.
just because I can.
Don't want to.
And says the guy that said nothing. So
Which is a rarity in
See,
itself.
now that's just a jab because I did speak.
So
That's a jab.
I've come to realize something with kind of as our relationship's grown between the three of us, is that we are three. We could not be more similar and more different at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all have the same. We have the same issues. We have the same pride, anger, and those kind of issues, but at the same time, they manifest themselves in drastically different ways between the three of us.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's really awesome that we're all able to see, hey, this is what this is, fully in what it is. Let's work on this together, separately and together for that. It's really comforting, at least, to know that you're not alone in that. You may be singular in your approach or in your feeling behind it, but it's the same root cause. And I know that that's the same worldwide, but it's really something to be able to see that firsthand, part of that Jerusalem circle.
Well, that's where Satan gets people. They feel alone.
Mm-hmm.
They feel like they're the only ones that are dealing with this issue. And until this year, I didn't even understand what the root of most of the issues are until this year. But we all feel so alone. Whether it's pornography, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, it's all just a manifestation. None of that is the root. The root is being pride. Mm-hmm. We all struggle with the same thing, but it's when you put yourself on a different level. Well, at least I don't struggle with.
There you go.
And that's where the plateau is so important
Mm-hmm.
to understand. The plateau of the sinner and the plateau of the saint. So important to understand. That's something the Lord gave to me. The plateau of the saint, of the sinner. I mean, the saint when someone else had introduced to me, but I never thought about it in the sinner realm too.
Right.
Because we're all on the equal playing field, And so, looking down at a person, well, that at least I may watch pornography, but at least I don't cheat on my wife with,
Oh, sure.
Or I may drink alcohol or be an alcoholic, but at least I'm not a drug addict.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm a drug addict, but at least I'm not a murderer.
Yeah.
I'm a murderer, but at least I'm not Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
It's kind of like there's
always somebody worse than you. And I can tell you, whenever I was heavily drinking, I was like, at least I'm not popping pills.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Well, and the Apostle Paul was on the plateau of the sinner, plateau of the saint, and he said, "I'm the chiefest of all sinners."
Yeah.
I was the chiefest, and every person should look in the mirror and see that in themselves.
Yeah.
But they should not let that affect who they are, because they're not a sinner anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They're a saint, and so, and that's how you keep pride out of it. you say I'm the worst.
We talked about that this morning too, because Paul said that he was the lowest of all the saints. And I talked about how he was self-deprecating in that he wasn't building himself up, but it wasn't in a point that he was ineffective. He was putting God so far ahead of him that he lowered himself to that standard.
Well, the Apostle Paul is the only apostle that I know off the top of my head that said to not do what we do. He said, "God forbid that I should glory."
Oh, sure.
And what have we done? We've made him an idol.
Yep.
He's my biblical hero. I'm like, well, you need a better hero.
He's a pretty bad dude.
Yeah, I mean, the hero should be him, Christ.
So you brought up a point. We've discussed amongst the group. I'm struggling with this, struggling with that, and we've kind of shared. I've also struggled with that. And we're kind of working on that. But I noticed that every time one of those things comes up, we address it, we conquer that in Christ. Here comes something else. And one that really keeps popping up is faith. I have moments where my faith is just completely gone, and I question everything. And that whole time there's that voice of they don't question theirs. They don't question their faith. They're a lot more strong than you. And I'm like, I know that's not true. But in that moment, it's absolutely true. Yeah. And so I hope that's encouraging to somebody out there that there's times where I doubt everything about myself, about God, about this whole situation. And it's just a way to dissuade.
Why do you think that he said in this time now that we should be around each other even more?
Yeah.
Yeah. Even more so you see the day approaching. So we should be, and that doesn't mean, in essence, just go to Sunday service.
No.
That means to surround yourself with like-minded children of God. And get yourself a inner circle that you can rely on.
Sunday service doesn't count.
Not in this aspect. No. Not what we're talking about here. You got to have an inner circle, and if you don't have that inner circle, and people say, well, according to the scripture and what y'all say, well, we got God and that's all I need, and I understand that mindset, and we have actually said that. But what I'm saying is God works through people. He always has, from Genesis to Revelation, and he always will. And so, even I see, even in the book of Revelation, even after this time period is over, he still works through people. We'll just be perfect people then. But he's still working through them. And so, if you have this mindset of, well, I'm just going to do, what God says to me specifically, or just this, or I don't need anybody else to tell me. Yes, you do. And the scripture is full of, you need the body. You need the whole workings of the whole body, because just like you were talking about, everybody in your church is different. They have different aspects. They see things in a different light from different angles. You've got to have that, because God works and he uses our own personality. He doesn't trash it. When you accept Christ, he doesn't trash your personality. An old preacher a long time ago said, before I accepted Christ, I liked pork and beans, and after I accepted Christ, I still like pork and beans. Real simple way of saying that I'm I'm still, in essence, that part of me is still here, and there's nothing about pork and beans that, or just like when you accept Christ, if you're a drug addict. You're a drug addict,
Still there.
Now you're a drug addict that's accepted Christ, and now he loves you too much to leave you there.
There you go.
Yeah.
I was trying to see where I had read that this morning. I can't remember what verse it was, but he talked about going out into Jerusalem, into all of Judea, then to the Samaritans, then to the rest. That's what it is, the rest of the world. And so we talked about how Jerusalem is your inner circle. That's the people you are closest to. That was the town they were in. Then Judea, well, that's the extended family, because that's the rest of God's people. Then the Samaritans, those were the half and halves. Those were the half Jews, half Gentiles.
Those are the people no one wants to go to.
That's the next. And then the rest of the world. You've got to have that inner circle. So what's some advice for you guys, since you guys have been in the game a little bit longer than I have, on amassing your inner circle? How do you find the group of confidants? How do you acquire a job?
Well, I just found ours.
You don't. you don't find them. God brings them to you.
I married into.
What you do is you ask God to give you the ability to recognize them when they come.
If you're obedient, you'll find them.
Have we fully discussed how we came to be?
I don't know.
So let's go. So first off, I met your daughter.
Funny story. Really.
This is a good story. This is how it may work for you. Obviously, it's not going to be the exact situation, but this is how God works. I met your daughter. Mm-hmm. We began to court, and she brought me to church very quickly, and I was enthralled. I wasn't the best, but I was hooked at that point. And so, of course, I worked my way up, so to speak, into the eldership and into the pastorship of the church. And then it was me and you. Mm-hmm. Having these conversations, living life. Didn't even consider you part of the circle. That's father-in-law Sunday school teacher. Yeah. And then you just happened to go into a coffee shop.
Actually, in May of 2020, before you guys met me, I walked through that door. You guys were in the middle of a podcast. I walked through that door, and I was with Mount Pisgah Bible Training Ministry. And I was getting ready to go preach at a church. I could find the actual date eventually. I just don't have it off the top of my head. But I could find the date. I walked through that door, and I said, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm here. I'm getting ready to go to church, but I wanted to give you a card from Mount Pisgah Bible Training Ministry.
You did.
That was me.
I remember that.
I do remember that.
That was me.
Yes.
So that's weird.
That is weird.
That's kind of spirit tingling.
I thought of that the other day.
Wow. I had not until you even put the point up here.
Yeah. Because I remember the specific Mount
It was
Pisgah.
really fast, just real quick.
I walked in, I saw you here, and I was like, well, that guy was in overalls or something. I thought that in my head immediately. I was like,
got a hat on, kind of pray.
This is an interesting person.
I remember that.
Yeah, I remember like it was yesterday. I thought that was interesting. But what's weird about it is if I recognized you, I didn't put it together.
Yeah.
But I noticed you more so than I noticed him.
Well, sure.
Because you guys awkwardly looked at me like what's this guy doing in here? Like I was.
Well, we normally don't have visitors.
Yeah. Well, we were also at the very beginning of the podcast. We were still uncomfortable with that too. So that's neat. That is pretty cool. I remember that. Hey, that's live. That's completely brand new. But so you had gone to the coffee shop just because it was in your area. And
well, I thought they were going to have hamburgers again.
Because that used to be that other restaurant that you really liked.
And when you could get one, they were awesome.
Yeah.
If you could find them open.
And so you and Jonathan began talking, and I don't know if it was just you two in there or not, but it came out that you were both believers, and you had this bond really quickly. So then you were like, "Hey, we got to get this guy on the podcast." And I was like, "Okay, I trust you. I assume you vetted this cat." And then of course you come on here that first time, and it was the worst experience you could imagine.
and then you said you did not vet this guy at all.
No, but what happened in that, and this is the part that I really want to get at. It was such a volatile moment for me because I was filled with nothing but contempt for you. But God continually would not shut up. I mean, it was a constant buzzing in my ear of, you needed to hear this, you need to talk to this. This was set for a reason. And then from that point on, it's been like, I've got to have more of this guy in my life. And that's kind of when this started happening. Then, of course, we've had meetings and groupings, and we've just continued to grow from that point. But it was literally just God said, I'm going to pick you up, and you're here today. Pick you up, you're here today. This is how this is going to come together.
Yeah.
Ghost.
Yeah. We started the coffee shop because we got laid off twice in 2020.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the little things. I remember walking through the door of this podcast room that one time. It was May or June. I can't remember the exact date. I remember walking through and handing the card and thinking those guys are never going to call me.
We did,
and you did.
We did.
I was right about that.
We called you later for different reasons.
But then Phil, I met Phil three. That's the third. This is coffee shop was the third time I met you.
Yeah.
And we talked. We talked at his house when I first door knocked with him. We talked, but I was uncomfortable at that time in my life. I was still hiding.
Sure.
I was just. I just didn't know who I was, really. I mean, I was a Christian, but I wasn't. I was still. I probably had a tie on when I door knocked you.
You were very dressed up.
Yeah, and so, and that was probably midsummer, and so.
Yeah, I thought you were Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah, I wasn't.
They don't wear jackets a lot of times.
No, I mean when I first looked out the door, I was like.
And so, and what got my attention was he was using Clarence Sexton's. Bible studies, and I just happened to go to Crown College, and so I had her. Anytime you go door knocking, you're trying to train to scope the area to find a likeness, and that was kind of what the
conversation
that's
started.
what I did. Yeah, and so that's what I did.
I'm blown away you having
Kim,
a physical copy of a book.
Well, and Kim worked with Clarence's sister.
Yeah. And so it was a matter of, this was a long time coming. We just didn't see it.
Yeah.
That's all there's to it.
And
a long time coming.
So if you want to go even further than that, back in the day, Philip's son dated my sister probably when I was in middle school. So I knew Brent, and by extension the family, just in the vaguest sense, for a good portion of my life. We had just never wrong place, wrong time kind of situation. Right. I think it was because God, we had growth to do. We had experiences to have before we could come together in that. And then we had Stephen kind of thrown in the mix. He was just your neighbor that you went over there introduced. Of course, he's working with you now.
The way he tells the story. Yeah. He came over and said, if there's anything I can help you with, then I'll do it. And then he left and never came back. And I'm like, that is the biggest lie story.
I know when people tell stories on you and how they're just not the truth. I get it.
That one's, dude, I'm telling you.
I tend to believe Stephen though.
That one was not even close to true. I went over there and I said, I just want to meet my neighbor. I want to know who you are. What it came down to was I was interested in who they were, and they're going to be around my kids. And so I wanted to make sure I knew who they were. And I'm very blunt, very bold, and I'm going to do it. But at the same time, I invited them to church, and so I always came packing. I invited them to church and talked to them about water system.
There you go.
And so
that's your two business cards.
That was my two
Stephen
spots.
said, after I already, they're coming through so fast I can't. Oh. After I already moved in, he asked to help.
I see you're packing that last box. Need a hand with that.
Yeah. Everyone has stories.
Yeah.
I just try to tell the true ones.
But you had started that monthly kind of prayer meeting with Bonfire.
I missed that.
Yeah, I did too.
I missed that desperately.
We need to start something back in. But I didn't get a chance to go to the first one. But I guess Steven had been introduced to the podcast from there, and he had heard something that I had said about alcoholism, and that kind of stuck with him because that was something that you guys had dealt with in that night. And so he was a mass. But the point is not to just say, hey, there's 4 great guys. It's just that God has been like moving people and specifically positioned them. He came from Florida. You guys came from West Virginia, 2 different parts of the state, basically 2 different states. I've always kind of been around here, but God puts people in your life when He needs you there for whatever reason it's there. And we can see throughout Scripture when Abraham met Melchizedek just happened to be in the area. Yeah. Because God puts people where He needs them when He needs them.
Well, you got to think, Carters are from Florida. The Canes, they started coming to our church from California. Larry and Heidi are from everywhere. The Fugates are from Alaska. These are people that have just randomly started coming to the church and stuff. And so the way I look at it is God is bringing a group of people together for a purpose.
Yeah.
And it's not just vision. I'm talking about a group of people.
Sure.
I include this church as part of the whole. And so, God is bringing these people together for a reason. It's not just because here we are doing a podcast together, hanging out. So, I do think we need to start the bonfires again, and I know that.
So, since you guys are both outsiders in this kind of idea, what do you think is drawing people other than God? Because there's nothing in this area to draw someone from Alaska, California, Florida, West Virginia. There's nothing spectacular about Roane County that would amass anybody to just specifically come here. There's not a big industry outside of Oak Ridge, and that's just moved to Oak Ridge kind of thing. So what do you think outside of God? It has to be God, right? That's
I know this. This is a story I got today. I went to a family's house. Great family, good people. I'm so thankful they're at our church now. And talked to them about, what moved you to Rockwood? I asked them that question. And they said, well, we were in Knoxville, and we would have bought that house if we could have. So that's strike one. Mm-hmm. And then we bought a house in Madisonville. We made an offer, had it go through, and then the inspection failed on that house. So strike 2. Mm-hmm. They bought this house over the phone. He said, we'll take, he made an offer on the house, and they accepted the offer before they even drove by the house. His wife was upset, mad, and all that stuff. But they ended up in the house, and then she came to the coffee shop. And then she said, my husband has got to meet you. And the whole premise of her coming was that I treated her family member who is of a state of mind that we're in disagreement with as far as their lifestyle.
Sure.
and she said, you just talk to them like they're normal. And I was like, because we're committed, we need to love them. It's not, you don't just browbeat them. You love these people.
Sure.
You're not getting anywhere with them by just saying you're a sinner. Well, yeah, they're a sinner. You know, that's and what they're doing is sin. And so, but anyways, so she that just like, I remember talking to her that day. Didn't know her from Adam, but she had tears in her eyes when she's like, you just talk to them like normal people. And I'm like, yeah. And her story is she went and told her husband, you have got to meet this guy. Brought him and then they came. It was like 6 to 8 weeks before they came to the church. I contacted him. He came and met me. I contacted him and said, man, I'd love to have you come to the church. And then nothing. So I just kind of put it on the back burner. Okay, well, what can you do? And then he texted me out of nowhere. Said, we're going to come to your church. So now they come. And so things like that don't happen. Josie and Steven, I went over to their house. And if they're honest,
after the work's over,
if they were honest, they had zero intention of ever coming to my church ever.
I think Stephen will admit that.
Yeah, and but they invited me to the Jay's birthday party, not Annabelle's birthday party, because they didn't invite me to Jay's. I just watched all the people have a good time from my house.
You just pulled out the binoculars.
Yeah, exactly.
I wish I was having that cake.
They invited me to Annabelle's birthday party. And I met
truth, he said.
I met Heidi and Larry, and Heidi just came. She just like beeline for me. She's like, "Oh, you're the next door neighbor. You're a pastor, aren't you? What church do you go to? Do you require women to wear masks?" And just boom, 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 question after question. And I said, "No, I don't do that. If you want to wear a mask, that's up to you. But we don't require that." And she said, "We'll be at your church tomorrow." So that was that. So she came to the church. And then Stephen started coming after they came, because that's never mind. She started coming after they came.
Because it's his in-laws.
Yeah, it's his in-laws. Yeah, he started coming to the coffee shop here and there.
That's why you.
That's what starts it.
And then the Fugates came because Larry and Heidi had house church with them. And it's just really weird how the onion peeled back. And then Stephen started coming to the coffee shop all the time. Probably twice a week he'd come and get sandwiches. And then out of nowhere he came to the coffee shop one day and said, I need to talk to you. I'm like, I know him, but I just know him as, he's my neighbor. He comes to the coffee shop. And so he came to me and said, that he and Josie got into it or having a fight or something like that, and he said, I just don't know what to do. So I took him to the storage room.
Yeah.
As he calls the closet.
The broom closet.
He calls it the broom closet. It's a large bedroom, storage room. We talked in there. I prayed with him. He went home that day and I guess dealt with whatever was going on there. And then he came over to the house probably 2 months later and said, just cried and said, I need to leave my job and I don't have anywhere to go. And so, we offered him that job, and then the first day he worked, I believe, was the day he got saved. First day he came to work.
Awesome.
It was really early on if it wasn't the first day.
Yeah.
It was a good first day, ain't it?
Yeah, so he came to Christ.
Was it the first day?
You could see the anger in his face when I asked him some of the questions I asked him.
That was a defining moment of our relationship, friendship, and brotherhood.
So, it just little things. And I'd already known you guys at that point. Come to the podcast. I had no idea what a podcast was.
Me neither.
Neither did he.
I
didn't have a clue.
And I still couldn't tell you if I've ever listened to one fully. Yeah. A podcast. I've listened to Facebook Live, but podcast I may have caught. I did. I caught one or two. Jeremiah's.
It's just a newer thing. Yeah. It's a pre-recorded radio.
I listen to Unashamed constantly.
Yeah. So I don't know. It was good. Just meeting you guys. When I walked in this room, I didn't know what in the world I was going to say. I had no clue what
we don't either.
My goodness, I had a tie on the first
time.
You
did.
Yes, you did.
You did.
I had a tie.
I thought you slept in them.
I love how we've kind of changed roles on that clothing too. I was dressed in the nines this morning, buddy.
Good for you, buddy. Hey, look, the first 36 years of my life, I wore a tie to church almost every Sunday. And so I plan on spending the next however many years God allows me to be alive in ties as very little as possible.
I love it.
That's good.
I absolutely love it.
I promise you, you wouldn't if you were browbeat into it.
No, that's absolutely the difference. Yeah. Since you were kind of forced into the lifestyle of it. Granted, your father was a pastor beforehand, and you went to school for everything. You were kind of forced into the lifestyle dressing that way. Shoot, I grew up blue jeans and t-shirt. That's what you got.
I wore a tie.
Like, I got a suit. I'm wearing a suit.
I wore a tie 5 days a week in Bible college.
Yeah,
5 days a week. And dude, these people would come all dressed out. They would have they would have such nice clothes. I was, poor. Poor is not poor like you were poor when I was poor. It was a different type of poor, different generation of poor. But we didn't have the money for that stuff. And so I would wear, I probably had like maybe 10 ties total.
Sure.
And I had maybe 5 pair of shirts, 5 pair, I didn't have a lot. And so I remember all these other guys would be all dressed and primped up and stuff. And I dressed just like I do now. I probably have 3 or 4 dress outfits that I cycle through. And I try not to repeat 2 days in a row, or 2 weeks in a row. That's kind of how it is. But that's because that's the way that I was in college. I didn't have the money then. Why would I spend the money now?
Yeah, that's more of that personality difference coming through there. Neither one of us is wrong. It's not wrong to wear a tie or not wear a tie.
Absolutely.
And that's one thing I really want to stress too. You always hear one of the questions. Now it's, do you require masks? But I've also heard you got to dress up. Blue jeans acceptable. I mean, khaki shorts are acceptable if you want to come. We'd just rather have you here how you are than to not have you at all.
Exactly.
You always joke that my one rule is no flip-flops, but I'll take you in flip-flops. That's fine, too.
Yeah, Austin has an issue with bare feet. They give him the
gross,
willies.
man.
They give him the willies. Well, I was thinking as we were all talking, and all the times that we have, so to speak, barely missed one another, and we've kind of been in, which we're in a small area.
We've basically lived in the same city for my entire life.
But to me, it's almost as if these opportunities were there, but sort of like what you say, but a little bit different in my mind, that maybe we weren't in the right position in each of our lives at those moments that we had either actually met or come close to meeting or whatnot, or is that how God works? That all these thoughts are coming through my head. Yeah. It's like, does he want us to be in that place to where we hear that still small voice? And if we had been listening, would we have come together?
Yeah. Part of me wonders. I wonder whether we would be. And this is not a prideful statement when I say spiritually. I mean, I've changed.
Sure.
Since you first met me. I've changed since you guys first met me a year ago, let alone I've changed since you first saw me when I knocked on your door. Would we have been able to change so drastically had we been on had each other's backs as long? If you understand what I'm saying.
So here's what I can tell you definitively. If I had met either of you prior to Savannah, wouldn't have happened. Because of who I was and where I was. And I've talked to Savannah about this. If I had met Savannah even a year before, nothing would have went.
Yeah.
Would not have happened. Because I was in a completely different spiritual, earthly place, that it wouldn't have worked that way. I think that God had to put me through, or allow me to put myself through, some tribulation to come to a point where I was ready to receive Him. And then she was kind of the shovel to present Him to me, and then from that's how that came together.
Yeah, I was just saying, I think things worked out in God's timing. I don't think we missed anything, but I think God wanted us to be familiar with each other.
Yeah,
familiar enough to know it's like, hey, I've met this guy, So because we had reference points. When you walked in the coffee shop, Phil, I had a reference point. It's like, oh yeah, I knocked on your door, if you remember, and so. That was a reference point, and it didn't mean anything at the time when it happened, but God used it for now. Sure. And when I walked in the door, even a year, back in I think May or June, and you guys forgot about that. Nonetheless, I was familiar with this podcast room.
Yeah.
Because of that, and I had no idea I'd ever be on it. And even then, I said, "Oh, that'd be really cool to do something like that." You know,
A lot of people think it's a cool idea. They're just too afraid to take the plunge and join us with it.
100%.
Speaking of 100 and podcast, coming up December 19th is our 100th episode of this podcast. 100 episodes.
That's if we don't do like a random Wednesday one.
We'll put it up later then. It will be the 19th.
And so what we're doing for this, and we could definitely use your prayers for this, and really any communication you get for us, ask us questions. We're going to try our best to get as many previous guests or new guests as we can on there. We have these amazing microphones now that'll pick up the whole room. We're going to do it in the church house, so there's room for everybody. We're going to have the camera on, and it's we're going to have just a blast with it. I can't wait to get that many people together to talk about God in one confined space. And it may be a little bit of reflection back. It may be a what's new with some people, but I'm really excited to be able to celebrate this. And not because of, hey, Philip and I have come together for 100 episodes, because God saw fit 100 episodes to go to plant the idea in me and to encourage you to get started on this. And you took off with it and started doing research and getting all this equipment sorted out and figured out. And we bought all this equipment at the beginning, and then we said, this is all we need here.
This will work just fine.
But it's absolutely crazy to me. If you go back and listen to the first episode, I never will again. Because
I want to.
We're like a
super shaky voice, and we had that pre-recording on
Was
there.
it on Facebook?
No, it was on Facebook yet. The first 30, I think, were just audio.
Yeah. True podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, without
I gotta go back on that.
Oh, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable.
We're like,
I mean, since I'm so critical, I gotta take a notepad.
it'll be. You better get a big notepad. Because they're...
Let's say we were so critical back then. We've already changed dramatically since then. But we're excited. We're really. I mean, I'm genuinely so appreciative of the audience. Because if we had just seen 2 people this entire time, we would have given up a long time ago. But we've seen growth, and we've seen people far and wide. I mean, far and wide. If there's people on a continent, we've reached them. The scientists in Antarctica aren't allowed to listen to us. Government won't allow that. But everybody else, we've hit all the other continents. We've hit hundreds of countries, hundreds of downloads, thousands of downloads now.
Yes.
And it's humbling because who would have thought that you and I, the Sunday school teacher and pastor of a less than 30 some odd people, would be able to reach this far. And it's through God's glory. It's the same thing. Who would have thought that Paul, a terrorist, would have been able to reach so many people? It's because God's doing it through us.
As I say, we never came in here really with those first early ones that are bad. It's because we had sort of an agenda to start
planned
with.
out. We're going to talk about this.
Yeah, we're going to talk about this. And
what did you talk about?
One of them was Job. One of them was
2 of them on judging.
The gray areas of God is very black and white about this, but it's kind of a interpretation on this kind of thing. Yeah, it was just don't listen
not
to
that
them.
Not that they're horrible, or that I think that we should take them off.
They're not the same quality.
What was your first?
They're totally different.
What was your first date of the first podcast?
Oh. I don't know.
Do you remember the year? Was it 19 or 20?
19.
19.
It was 19.
It was pre-pandemic.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the pandemic just kind of kept rolling.
It happened in the middle of when we first started.
We really started getting comfortable because we had done a few before then, but during the pandemic, I was laid off. We couldn't go to work. We started doing more episodes in between then.
I wanted to say it was December of 19 or something. I don't know.
I couldn't tell.
I'll have to go back and look.
Yeah,
just curious.
But that's also going to be the last episode we get to do before Christmas, because it's the week before that. So I'm sure we'll have something about that on there. That's one holiday we can talk about pretty happily. So we would love for you to join us with that. We'll get you a more defined time frame where that's going to be, and try and get a list of guests. I'd love to have your mom be able to call into her if we couldn't get her physically down here. And it's just going to be something really exciting. I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to another 100. And see what changes we take place in the next 100 from there, and see kind of where we grow.
The next 100, I'll be in shorts and a t-shirt.
Jonathan keeps losing clothes.
Have a tank top. It says Rad Dad on it.
You've lost clothes. I've lost a little weight.
That's good. Yeah, I need to.
Austin's been able to grow a little more hair.
Working on it. Dad called me out today on my patchy right cheek, so I said I'll just even them both up and get it through there. You guys got anything else in your heart for us today?
Nope.
I better get over here.
Just pray for Phil's sister this week.
Yeah. Well, pray for everybody who's going to be able to reach out there. We don't know I don't know what to expect. I just know to expect God's going to be there. Pray for our safe travels. Of course, Philip and potentially you, but at least Philip's going up there a few days before I get a chance to go up there. So pray that God really moves through us and pray that we move out of the way. Pray for the 100th episode. Pray for the podcast, not for our benefit, but for God's benefit. Like we were talking about, this isn't possible with just Philip and myself. And it's not possible with Jonathan's help on this. This is because God has a purpose for this. And I don't know what the full extent of that purpose is. I'm just hanging on and excited for the ride. We appreciate all the help, all the comments, all the communication you've given us. You can still reach out at blessingandcursing3019@gmail.com. You can comment below this video and join Stephen with the comments. We can read those. If you message us on Messenger, Philip and I both get those, so we're both able to respond to you in kind for that. And really, it's just a fantastic way to be able to reach out and talk to us and to share your questions. You can rate and review on the podcast apps and on YouTube. Now, we are on YouTube, so you can watch this from there. And all the comments, we'd love to get those, love to get the ratings. But the single greatest thing you can do to help us outside of prayer is to share this to your groups, whether it's on Facebook or just share it with your friends and family. Like these two guys said, they didn't know what podcasts were before this was the introduction to them. So there's a lot of people you can say, hey, have you heard of the Blessing and Cursing podcast? And they'll say, I don't know what a podcast is. So you can take them and show them how to do that. And it's just another way for us to get the gospel into somebody else's ears, because the whole world has been called to hear it. And how will they hear unless someone tells them? So we appreciate the help. God bless you. Thank you.